Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got Trita Parsi on to talk about that peace deal between Israel and the UAE. What does it really mean? We've also got the panel in the House. We're going to do something that is really unforgivable and talk about the 2024 primary. There's a new poll out. You can't resist it. You really can't resist it. But we wanted to start actually with some new data that is really quite revealing.
Oh, very, very revealing. This is from Pew, which is one of the best pollsters in the game. Let's throw that up there. The top reason that Biden supporters give for voting for him, he's not Trump. 56. That's correct.
That's incredible.
56% of the people who support Joe Biden for president say that they are doing so because he is not Trump. That's it.
That's it.
19% say leadership or performance as a candidate. 13% say personality. Here's my favorite. 9%, only 9, say his issue or policy positions.
But Saagar, I thought that the Democratic primary results meant that centrism was ascendant and everybody loved the platform. I thought that's what that meant.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought so too, except literally nobody thinks that. So, okay, what is Trump's? The Trump's is actually a lot more even. 23% leadership policy performance, that's his first issue. For issue and policy positions is 21%, so a full 1/5. He is not Biden is 19%, his third number one. And then fourth is he is for American people and values. For people who align that with Biden, it's only 6%. That's incredible. I mean, just to see again, though, which is that Trump basically is such a polarizing figure that the people who love him, and the people who hate him a lot. Nobody has mixed feelings about President Trump. And you can actually see that, too, in the strong support data that we have. Let's throw that up there on the screen. What can you see? 46% of Biden supporters strongly support him. 66% of Trump supporters strongly support. So the moderate support and lean towards support for Biden dramatically outweighs his strong support other way around whenever it comes to Trump.
Moderately support for the win. And you can see there the top lines, too. I mean, this is a poll that has Biden leading by 8 points.
Yes, he's still doing better.
So even with it just being like overwhelmingly, he's not Trump, and that's all I really care about, today that is actually winning the race. But I think it's a big vulnerability, right? Democrats have run this playbook before, not just obviously in 2016, when Hillary's whole bet was that Trump was bad was enough. That she seeded the terrain. She let cable news put him on the screen all day, every day. Her ads were children are watching, etc. Biden's running a very similar campaign of like the soul of the nation. That's his thing.
That's it. That's what he started. That was his announcement.
Right. And granted, look, I think they have done a better job prosecuting the case against Trump than Trump has done prosecuting the case against them. But there's still a lack of an affirmative positive vision on their side, as evidenced by the fact that only 9% are like, yay for the positions. But this is not the Hillary example is not the only one. I think back, too, of the opposition to George W. Bush in his reelection campaign. And I think, a lot of liberals have sort of like, I don't know, put down a memory hole the way that they felt about him at the time. But there was every bit as much angst and anger and animosity towards him, I would say justifiably so, among Democrats. Many young people were activated during that time, getting involved in politics. And there was this sense of like the fact that he's bad is going to be enough, even though there was no excitement for John Kerry. It was like, it doesn't matter because George W. Bush, we're going to just push the case against him. It didn't work out.
No,
so it's a very tenuous, it's a very fragile kind of campaign that they are running here, which you see in the lack of enthusiasm, you see in the lack of the strong support, you see in the fact that his strongest selling point is just not being Trump. And look, again, could work, could absolutely work out. The other thing that they reveal in this poll is that you have historic numbers of people saying this election is really, really important. More voters say it really matters who wins the presidency than at any point in the last 20 years. So that's 83% of registered voters who say that. And so, look, if you have people feeling like the stakes are really existential, and they feel like, they really can't stand Donald Trump because he's such a divisive figure, maybe it's enough to just be the default guy. That is certainly what the Biden campaign is banking on.
That's their entire ban. But again, very risky strategy, because if Trump comes out and gets his hands on around coronavirus or has a vaccine or something, it seems very promising. okay, people are going to be willing to give him a shot if they think that he can lead them out of that crisis. They're not pressing any policy case against Trump whatsoever. And you could also see, I think that also really is a sign of the times. If we can throw that graphic up there on the screen, in 2000, it was like only 50%. We're like, yeah, I guess it's kind of
That's important.
Yeah, they're like, but that's 2000. Everything's great. The economy's fine. The only thing, the worst thing that happened is a dot-com bubble. There's no wars. Then immediately, Iraq War, you could see right there after 9/11, 67%. We kind of lived in that until 2016. And then now with coronavirus plus the polarization, we're at the 83%. But you should not mistake that for meaning that Biden is going to win. Because people who are supporting Trump, as you saw in those strong support numbers, feel every bit as existential as the people who are supporting for Joe Biden.
That's true.
And so if you have that kind of hyper-polarized environment, you're actually not necessarily the beneficiary as the Joe Biden candidate. And I think the saddest thing is that for the first time, somebody could win a landslide victory without any positive case to the American people. For the very first time. I mean, I can't think of another example. Maybe Barack Obama 2008, but even that was couched at least in hope and change.
Yeah, people thought, they projected a lot onto him, even if it was left kind of wide open. There was a sense that this was going to be a sea change, that it was going to be a sort of changing of the guard, new way of doing politics. There was that positive, hopeful vision. Yeah, this time around, it really is a strictly lesser of two evils campaign.
Right.
And those sorts of numbers, 83% of registered voters being like, this is existential, those are not healthy numbers. It's not a good thing for a republic when people feel that way. And we've seen this play on the Trump era because it justifies all sorts of insanities. Yeah, exactly. It justifies all sorts of lying and corruption and nefarious behavior. And I'm not just talking about among political elites. I'm talking about among the general electorate. That's part of why the political conversation that we have is so tense and so skewed and so dishonest, because people have this feeling like we can't tell the truth and give the other side a talking point. So because the stakes are so existential that anything is essentially justified in, getting my candidate and my team across the finish line. And you see this also in the reaction to Kamala being picked as vice president. All the supposed principles and values of many people, including many white liberals, who claim to really back like a movement for Black lives and criminal justice reform and police reform and all of these things. They're now like, yay, Kamala, without looking at any of the record, because they feel that first of all, they're like fine with the symbolic nature of it anyway. But any attempt to criticize, to talk about the realities of policy with Biden or with Kamala or anyone really on the Democratic team, you're treated like you're some like evil traitor to the country because people have this existential feeling. And it's the same thing on the right. The same thing is going on.
If you criticize Trump, they're like, what do you want to do? Make the Democrats want to win? I'm like, no, I want you to win by being better. I was like,
great.
I want you to be better. I want you to live up to what you promised so you can win again. But no, they don't want to hear it. And they think that any criticism is assistance to the other side, that if you tell the truth or if you point out any of the things, they're like, oh, what are you working for the other team? It's just ludicrous, right?
Really
because
stupid.
It kills any ability to have honest conversation. And the most potent criticism, as you see and as I see, is when you criticize your own side. Because then people can't, they could try and accuse you of working for the other side, but they know it's not true,
right?
Empirically. That is actually what I think that can push people in the correct direction, but they don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, they don't, because they feel this sort of way. And it gets ginned up by cable news, too. And it bleeds down from, it's not just about, look, obviously we pull no punches where the leadership of this country is concerned, regardless of political affiliation, whether it's our team or his team or whatever. But what it turns into is a total demonization of the people who are supporting the other party. And that is, that existential feel of like, my own fellow citizen is the greatest threat to the nation. That's where we're in a really ugly place in the republic. There are also numbers here in this poll that shows people are really worried about being able to vote. Justifiably so. First of all, the president is out there basically admitting he doesn't want to fund the post office because it would help with mail-in balloting. We also have the results out of New York and other states where mail-in balloting didn't go well.
Yeah, it could be a total mess.
20% of mail-in ballots thrown out in the state of New York. So, and obviously pandemic, people don't feel safe going to their polling places. So a lot of concern that this is something that really worries me a lot about how election day is going to go, because again, this ties into the existential numbers. Like when people feel that tense and that fraught about it, and like this is the most important thing that is ever going to happen in their lifetime, that creates a very volatile situation if you do have election day problems. And when you have actors who are bad faith actors on both sides of the aisle who will take advantage of any failures in the election system, and a president who is trying to create some of those failures in the election system, it's a really dangerous situation. It truly is.
Trump is going to lose this one, which is that Americans want to vote by mail because they don't feel safe going to the ballot.
Yeah.
And actually, I always try to tell these GOP operatives this. There's a study that came out, the Knight Foundation, which we covered here on the show, which was that more voter participation would actually lead to more Republican votes. They found that, which is that more people, if they expanded access to the ballot for non-voters and for working class voters, the GOP would actually win more votes. But they're terrified of doing it because of scaremongering and a lot of old ideology. And I'm saying, even remove that, you want to secure the feeling that Americans want here economically, medically, and vote in terms of voting matters is certainty. They want the certainty that they'll be able to cast their ballot. They want the certainty that they'll be able to pay their bills. They want the certainty that they're not going to die of coronavirus.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what you have to provide people.
Listen, if you really are a populist, then you have to believe in the people.
Right?
And not be like, and not be afraid of, And that's part of what this is. It's like an elite control mechanism so that they can keep power for themselves and not have to worry about like those scary, terrible, stupid people out there making the wrong decisions. Yeah. There's one final data point we wanted to put out here because we showed sort of the vulnerabilities for Biden of the lack of enthusiasm, the fact that they're just voting for him because he's not Trump. On the other side, Morning Consult did some polling on how people feel about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Surprise, surprise, Saagar.
Yep.
I know people are going to be shocked to learn this, but they don't see Biden and Kamala Harris as like radical extremists. They actually see Pence and Trump as more to the right than they see Biden and Kamala to the left. They see them as like relative moderates because they are.
Yeah, and that's well, again, though, our political language is broken because to me, real radicalism is being, as pro-Wall Street as Kamala Harris is.
Well, that's
or as
a very
pro-Wall
good
Street.
point.
I see, and so I refuse to buy into this moderate and
really
very conservative. What does it mean to be pro-reparations and pro-Wall Street? Like, can you wrap your head around what that means to be a total identitarian sellout and also be pro-big business? I mean, we have no way of talking about that in modern political discourse. So I think I'm very comfortable calling it, as we are, corporatism and not. And then you can talk about it as well whenever it comes to race issues or gender issues or class issues, social issues. That's the way that we should all think about it. And Americans see that too.
Yeah.
So they're bought into that frame. So they're like, oh, well, she doesn't want to raise, Is Bernie radical because he thinks people should have health care? I mean, according to that scale, he is, right?
Right.
And are you a radical if you want less immigration? I mean, according to that scale, you're very conservative. But that actually puts you in the middle of around where the country is. So again, I don't buy any of these.
Or people who are true libertarian, even like a John Kasich who really is kind of like a libertarian.
Right.
That position, that anti-spending, cut Social Security, bust the union.
You're the radical.
That's a radical position.
Yeah. Yes.
And then I also noticed, this always cracks me up in the New York Times, they describe anyone on the left as liberal. Mm-hmm. So they'll describe Bernie Sanders as really liberal, or even Jake Yu, or anyone who's they'll describe them as really liberal. Because even the New York Times, which should theoretically have some understanding of the left, has no language for understanding differences between an Elizabeth Warren type liberal or a Kamala Harris type liberal or a Bernie Sanders type candidate. And so it all gets lumped on this very nonsensical scale.
Yeah. It's just how broken our political rhetoric is.
Yeah. All right, coming up on Rising, the first peace treaty between Israel and an Arab country in 25 years. It's announced yesterday. Professor Trita Parsi is going to break down what is in that peace treaty. What does it mean when Rising returns?